Greetings, mortals. Welcome back to the Library of Gnosis. Today, I have a very special guest with me. Morty, introduce yourself.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Marty Leeds. I am I call myself a teacher of the mysteries and a preacher of the heart. I am a minister. I run a school, academy and church called the Gnostic Church and Academy of Lord Jesus Christ. And that is at gnosticacademy.org. And also on YouTube. I got an Odyssey channel as well. And yeah, I've written some books, made some documentaries. I do a church service every Sunday. And basically a mystic, Gnostic, occultist, I guess is what you'd call it. That's Kabbalist. There's a whole bunch of terms, I guess you could throw out. Alchemist, I guess. So that's, I guess, me in a nutshell. So.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar path in life, I think, with all the mystery schools. I would identify myself more as an hermeticist now than a Gnostic, but there's you've heard of, is it called omnism, I think, or like Prisca Theologia, that there's like truth in every religion or cult school. Yep. Yeah. So I'm right now I've been drawing a lot of connections between Hermeticism and Gnosticism and Christianity in general. I watched your video on the squaring of the circle. Very, very good video. I highly recommend everybody to go check that out. And it just everything just kind of tied into my own theory about Hermes. If you like, I don't know if you've seen, I just made a video on Hermes and Jesus being the same soul or character. If you've seen the Good Shepherd with Hermes carrying a lamb on his back, there's a motive of that with Jesus as well. And there's so many more connections. One thing that really ties into your squaring of the circle is, the pyramids, the Giza-Orion hypothesis?
Yep.
It even says so in the Emerald Tablet, I think. No, that's the prophecy of Thoth, I think, where he's speaking to Asclepius, and he tells us that Giza is like an image of the heavens on Earth.
Uh-huh.
And the Great Pyramid, which in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth talks about building the Great Pyramid, it squares the circle of Earth in relation to, And then you have the three pyramids, which mirror Orion, and that's the birth of Christ with the three wise men, the three kings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's, endless connections when you bring the study. This is really what it's all about. To me, Hermeticism, Alchemy, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, these are all basically sort of essentially the same sort of idea of the same work. There's different different explanations for the same process. It's all about the great work. And so when you bring Hermeticism to a study of the Bible, right? Whether that's like an alchemical study, an occultist study, a mystical study, a Gnostic study to the Bible, that's where all these revealings will just start jumping out at you, and the connections will be infinite, and it will start making so much sense. And so one of the things I actually teach is what's called the fourfold patristic approach to biblical exegesis, or understanding the Bible. And it's called the fourfold patristic approach, meaning church fathers, but it's literally called the hermeneutics, which is based on, as you know, Hermes. So this is basically, if you want to understand the true messages of the Bible, the true what's called the anagogic or the mystical or the deeper levels, you have to bring your study of Hermeticism to it. And so I absolutely see myself as a Hermeticist. I've studied the heck out of that stuff. I use the term Gnostic which is something I'm going to talk about next Sunday, actually, in the sermon, but because it really sort of identifies the notion that you seek these answers through autodidactic means by direct experience. And that's really what Gnosis is. It's a knowledge of spiritual mysteries is what Gnosis is actually defined as. And that knowledge of spiritual mysteries means it comes from a spiritual source. You don't go and get it from another human being. It's a direct connection to God, which is exactly what all of the essentially great mystics throughout time have lauded. They've talked about this sort of revelatory experience. I mean, that's what all, Revelation is all about, St. John and receiving the word and all this stuff. So at the core, it's all there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, squaring the circle, just to mention this briefly, I did a whole chapter in the new book that I've written called Lord Jesus Christ. It's just called Lord Jesus Christ. And a whole chapter on squaring the circle and how it's all embedded in Jesus, which is you're absolutely 100% correct, a reflection or a carbon copy or a image, if you will, of Mercury, of Hermes. So, all different basically names for the same transcendental being in that sense.
Yeah, and to separate Hermeticism from Gnosticism is kind of vague because they both use the same word, Gnosis. So Hermeticism is a form of Gnosticism, I would argue, because it's the search for Gnosis.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. The work that I try to engage in, the work that I am engaged in, is to really find the connecting threads and not the barriers. You know what I mean? So a lot of people, and this is what I see so many people doing, they say they identify something, a lot of times incorrectly, naively or ignorantly, they'll identify something and then say, oh, this is in a box over here and it's in a separate room from this over here. And this is, I think the Gnostic approach is to find the connecting threads throughout all of them. It's been called, or what I like to call, the golden thread. And that's that thing that unifies all these things. And so that's really what it's all about is, like I said, finding the correlations between all of these different things. And so, yeah, Gnosticism is Hermeticism. They're, whatever, two peas in the same pod kind of thing,
Yeah, I think, I don't remember where I read this, if it's somewhere, but I heard somebody speak about the old age religion. I think it was maybe Billy Carson, if you know who that is.
Who is this?
Billy Carson.
No. I should know him though. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think he wrote a book on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
Maybe that's why I've heard of him. Okay.
Yeah, he does a lot of Anunnaki stuff and.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, he's an interesting character for sure. And it's like they call it New Age, this kind of stuff, like esoteric stuff. But really, it's old age. It's the old religion. Yeah. Yep. All these other are the new religions.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like people think it's New Age is it's basically old. You're totally right. It's old age. It's basically the true mystic way of looking at Scripture and understanding it. And the actual New Age is what you would call contemporary Christianity, which is a very surface level, completely rejects all the mysticism, and then doesn't really provide any answers to these stories. Any answers you do actually provide, they reject, and then they call you a New Ager, or me a New Ager. It's like, well, I can't stand when it comes to actually like New Age junk, like the woo New Age. I can't stand it. I've never liked any of it ever. And I also had huge issues with, modernity or modern contemporary Christianity because that never made any sense either. It was very, so yeah, I think you're spot on. Yeah.
I think honestly,
sorry, I don't mean to stop. That's really what I'm trying to do is really bring this back to help people understand the Bible, but make it very palatable and realizing that it's like, no, you have to go back and see how these people actually experience the Bible, experience Scripture, experience these mystical practices, everything, that's what, to me, that's what I'm trying to do. Anyway.
Yeah. And the oldest scripture we found is, I think it's the Gospel of Thomas, and that's in the Bible at least. And that's kind of a Gnostic text, which is interesting.
I mean, now that I understand and experienced Gnosis, like directly a lot, to me, the entire Bible is Gnostic. There's nothing, it's really an approach to understanding the deeper level. So to me, the Bible is, we're speaking specifically of the Bible. This is like, I'm not negating the Mahabharata or any of these other books or, the Vedas or anything like that. But when you look at the Bible, it is occultism ne plus ultra. It's mysticism with the pedal to the frickin' metal. And unless you bring your study of that stuff to it, it doesn't make any sense, you know? So yeah, the entirety of the Bible is Hermetic and Gnostic. You know?
Yeah. And the thing about it is it's coded. It's allegorical in a lot of sense, and mathematical, alchemical, astro-theological. There's so many levels of the Bible. You can read it 100 times and get different things from it.
Okay, this is like what makes all these things so powerful to me, is the fact that, like, you know, there isn't just one way to look at it. And in a mathematical sense, there's 360 different ways to look at it. Because it's like you have to go all around every degree of that circle, you know, metaphorically speaking. That's what makes it so brilliant, that you can have one story, and on its surface level, it's just a tale or a story or whatever you want to think. But then there's a level of biology and physiology, and then there's alchemical processes, and then, you know, processes of nature. Then we're talking about the stars in the sky. Then we're talking, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, geometry and all of that sort of stuff. You know, that notion should not be controversial to anybody, because if you actually look at how the original Hebrew Bible, the Torah, was written, it's clear that it was encoded, that there's different levels and layers of information. That said, and then you actually go to, like I said, the church fathers, right? The patristic approach, church fathers, they'll tell you the same thing. It's literally layered. And then all of a sudden now somebody, you know, we come along and say, yeah, here it is. And now we can actually make sense of it. And then it's like you're a devil worshiper or something. It's
now
like,
we have Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, it's like, yeah. I mean, that, anyway, you get it. Yeah. It's a bit frustrating, you know, for me, because it's like there's so many things to be revealed in the Bible, but to get people to turn their ear to it, you have to have overcome a lot of obstacles mentally in your mind in order to accept these things, because there's so many things along the way that people get taught that it's like, no, that's evil, no, that's New Age, no, that's this and this and this and this. And you really have to wipe your slate clean and be like, oh, well, everything I was taught about that stuff was bullshit.
Yeah,
you know, and provable bullshit, you know.
That's what I hate so much about the modern interpretation of the Bible. It's like people are grown up with Christian parents, and they get taught you're going to hell, and people rebel. You know, it's like but they're going the wrong direction in a sense. They'll probably spiral back like I did. Became an atheist for a while, but then you kind of, you know, once you drink deep enough of the glass, you find God at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's something. It's just interesting too, being in the position I am in, because I didn't have that. A lot of people grew up with Christianity or whatever. It was like they had to read the book, you know, the Bible, and they went to Bible study, and they went to church every Sunday, and their parents, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But they never provided them any answers as to what these stories actually meant, you know. And so eventually children who are inquisitive like yourself and me and want real answers and, you know, are sort of rambunctious and analytical, you get to a point where it's like, oh, you know, this is bullshit, and I'm walking away. I wasn't fed this stuff as a child. I wasn't reared or raised as a Christian. So I never had that separation where I was like indoctrinated into it, and then I sort of rebelled. Though I did approach religion and was just kind of like, oh, this is all garbage. What a bunch of nonsense. People are believing crazy ass shit, right? And so I rebelled in that sense. But for me, it's weird because, you know, now I've come back, not even back to it, but come to this. And then I'm seeing people like yourself or all over that had this sort of break, rebelled against it because it didn't make any sense. And now we're coming back to it. And like to watch people be like, oh my God, wow. Like, you know, I've had people older people like that are like 70 years old that like taught this stuff. We went to school and learned all this stuff and years and years and years. And then they had a separation from it. They went to this church and this church to find some answers, and they couldn't find it. And then they finally come back to, or, you know, reach my channel or whatever. And we go line by line through this stuff and make sense of it. It's crazy to watch them be like, oh my God, because they were indoctrinated for 20, 30 years in this, taught this has got to be true, never made any sense. And now somebody comes along and it's like, oh, you can make palatable sense of this stuff. I can only imagine that's got to be to experience that has got to be something else. Because like I said, I was never raised in it. So I didn't have that thing where I had to rebel against, you know, my family or church or, you know, that sort of thing. So it's crazy. I've had some people that have messaged me that have just been like, they've said things like that, like, oh my God, I was taught this stuff for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and it never made any sense to me. And now when you bring a hermetic approach to it, a Gnostic approach to it, all of a sudden, holy shit, it's amazing. People are literally like, have that revelatory, like, oh my God moment that you're supposed to have at church.
Yeah. It's like having an insight is, I've heard it compared to putting on a pair of shoes that fit like perfectly. You feel like you step into it. It's like if you've heard Plato say that all learning is remembering. Kind of feels like you're just becoming more of yourself in a sense.
Yeah, like, I mean, whenever you come to big truths, it's like it's something you knew all along.
Yeah.
And it's very refreshing. It's like, so you may have not known it, but you knew it deep inside. Like subconsciously, like the truth within you, the God within you is like, hey, find this, find this, find this. It's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
And you find it, Yeah, that's...
And then the universe starts freaking you out with all these synchronicities. It's like, it just... Here. Am I schizophrenic?
Well, there's been several, like, for me anyway, personally, like a lot of psychological breaks where I distinctly, I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to say this without sounding like arrogant or something like that. But where I was like, I got smarter. Like there was a point where it was like, boom. And now you're put into new shoes that you were waiting to get yourself into the whole time. And things just made more sense. Higher consciousness.
Yeah.
And there were definite breaks in my life where it was just like, wow, it's almost like I can feel the connections in my head or something. Very, I don't know, amazing. There's no other explanation for it except spiritual clarity is a great,
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's quite amazing. I've been listening to, I don't know if you heard Bashar. It's Daryl Ank, I think he's called. He's a channeler. He channels this alien called Bashar. And I've never been into this channeling stuff that much, but this guy is really, really good at it. And I've been listening to a lot of his information about how our beliefs create our reality, and everything that happens to you can serve you if you decide to have that belief, or it can it can wreck you. But there's also like pain and suffering and all these things we run away from. It's also something that causes complexity and depth in the soul and character. It's an important part of growth, I think.
Yeah. I think in a spiritual pursuit, I know from personal experience, one of the things that you will have to come to in your spiritual pursuit of understanding God and accepting God is the ultimate question is, why did God create pain and suffering? Why did God create torture? The pain, the torment, the torture, profanity, nausea, suffering, perversion, profanity, right? Why did God create all of that? And so you have to surmount that philosophically. You have to find the reason. And there is a reason. And the one is you just expressed, like you are in a place where the soul is undergoing this transformation, right? Or that's the quest of the soul. It's that transmigration. What do you want to say? Transformation, whatever. What's the word I'm looking for? Transubstantiation of the soul is what I'm looking for. That's what you're here to do. And so in order for that to happen, you need the interplay of good and evil. You need the obstacles. You need that obstacle course, which is the evils and the pain and the suffering of the world in order to learn. And so when you come to that, you realize that there is a grand purpose for this design. This is really what you seek out as a religious or a spiritually seeking person. The purpose of this thing. Why am I here? Where am I going? Where did I come from? What is the meaning of life? 42. But evil, in one sense, pain, suffering gives you that purpose because you're like, oh, okay, well, God wouldn't have created all of this stuff if I wasn't to be thrown against it in order to perfect, in order to be the warrior, and that's really what Earth is. And in a Gnostic approach, it's exactly what it is. It's a rites of passage where the soul gets in sort of imprisoned in matter to go through the whole process of liberating that spirit and getting back to source, which that general idea or motif is really at the core of most religions as far as I understand. So.
Interesting that 42, 4 plus 2 equals 6. The square.
Well, I mean, there's so much to 42 too. I mean, it's not like I said that jokingly, but it's crazy the amount of. I mean, 42 is an extremely Kabbalistic number, where it's one of these things that it's like a lighthouse, and not a lighthouse. I guess you could say a lighthouse on the horizon. It's where it allows you to understand where land is. It makes all of these connections.
Prism.
That, yeah, that's what really numbers are. It's a language,
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear about Kabbalah. I haven't really studied it that much. It hasn't been my field of study. When you're going to the esoteric, you hear about it, of course, but I'm not that good at the different sephiroths and the tree of life and all the gematria and stuff.
I mean, you have to be dedicated. Like I was not insanely, like, because that sounds like I'm insane, but like
obsessively.
But not like, it wasn't possessed. It wasn't like possessed or obsessed or insane.
No, obsessed can be a good word.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a divine dedication.
Yeah.
A divine dedication, and maybe is the best way to say it. It's just, I had this thing where I was like, I want to understand this shit. There was so many of these mysteries that when you enter, it's this initiatory journey, and you have to self-initiate. No one's going to push you on the path. No one's going to be like, you have to go down this. No, it's autodidactic. You have to self-initiate. When you self-initiate on that journey, there's all of these mysteries that are presented to you. And if you're hungry and you really want to know, then you just whatever it is, you read the book, you listen to the interview, you do the study, you do the ruminating and pondering, you do the meditation, whatever it is. So when it came to like Kabbalah, I mean, it's a crazy big mystery that it seems like no one has a grip on. I don't know how many books that I would read. There would be contradictory information, all of this stuff. So it got to a point where I was like, what? I want to know. So it was just digging and just keeping open to accept it. And then, I mean, now I feel like I have I don't want to say a perfect understanding of it by any means, but a pretty dang good grasp on what Kabbalah is, how we can find it. It's not just some Hebrew thing. We can find it in Norse mythology. We can find it in Egyptology. We can find it in the Christian angelic hierarchy, et cetera, et cetera. We can just go down the list. And so, that's, this is what Gnosis does. It presents you these mysteries, and God's like, well, do you want to know it or not? And then we'll find out where it leads, which is to him. It's like, jeez, man, it's powerful stuff.
Take one step towards God and he takes 7 towards you. I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. God, it's all on you. This is what Masonry will, if you take Freemasonry seriously as to what Masonry really is, which lots of people are misconstrued about that. But this is what Masonry will teach you. You have to knock. No, they're not going to come and be like, come down to the lodge and we're going to let you in. No, you have to knock, you have to ask, you have to get 2 people to, I think it's 2 or 3. I'm not a Mason, so, 2. But I know basics. Yeah, it's 2, right?
Yeah, 2 to vouch for you.
Yeah, it's vouch for you. And it's all up to you. And then when you get in there, they say, don't cast your pearls before swine, and, and knock, and it shall be opened down to you. You have to do the work. And no one tells you, here's Mackey, and here's Steinmetz, and here's whatever, Pike, go read it. No one tells you that. Though they will have a library of literature, which is just unbelievable. I mean, if you want to, pardon my language, a fucking amazing library, go to any serious Mason. They will have books that you've never heard of that will blow your hair back if you have any. It's just a fact. And so it's all up to you. And that's really what God puts it in your lap, puts it in your hands.
Yeah, it's all about the inner temple as well. Very important.
Yeah, I mean, the temple there's nothing wrong with going down to the church and hanging out with the community and experiencing God together. That's extremely important, especially for a lot of people who are social. I'm not so social, so it's not as necessarily important for me. But that's not the temple that you're worshiping in. That's just a building. That's all it is, made by hands of man. The temple is you. And once again, when you understand that, then you start exploring. Oh wow! Oh God! Oh man, know thyself, and you should know the gods, the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a very 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 enticing. Very how do you put it? It's like God puts a quest before you, and you start like it's like kind of like a video game in a lot of senses. You get this, and you get that, and that. It's like story cues. Like reality feels like a bit of a script. I mean, I do believe in destiny, but I also believe in free will. But like I think it works like this: you're going to walk through this hallway, but you can choose to crawl or run. That's your levels of options, but I think a lot of it is predestined as well.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the life is a story. It's more like that than nuts and bolts mechanistic kind of thing. I think this is why all the great tales are taught through mythology, because mythologies are ultimately stories, and ultimately your life is, even like I've said this, like my story, in one sense, it's the story, and that's all it'll be. It's you got here, you don't remember nearly any of it. You go through you get all this crazy shit that happens to you. You got to deal with it. You got to figure things out, and ultimately it's a quest. Most people don't know that they're on the quest, so therefore they can't make sense of the pain and the suffering or the synchronicities or the little magical moments that connect all things. They don't understand that. Once you understand you're on the quest, then it does become like, I say like this, that the world is more like living poetry than it is a machine in any sense. And I think the great mystics, which, Gnostics, are trying to get you into that mindset. And once you get there, it's a mindset of poetry,
Yeah, for sure. It's musical.
Yeah, for sure. It's like your melody. And sometimes your melody crashes and it's dissonant. It's like, you're playing some shit 6 chord or whatever. And next thing you know, you're back into it, and that's how it is. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of beauty to it. I mean, I know it's a lot of pain too. Like it's hard work, but anything that's worth doing is difficult, I think.
Yeah. If you want to have it easy, then be dead, or dead. Be in the spiritual realm. Things are way easier. Much more denser here. Not as fluid.
Yeah, life is not meant to be easy, for sure. And I think I will say this: I know for years, sorry, the train in the background. For years, I put what am I trying to say? Sorry, give me a second. I put obstacles in front of me purposefully in order to overcome them. Like it's like I'm just going to go climb that mountain. I liked hiking and I liked doing that stuff, but and it wasn't because I was like, I have to be the best mountain climber ever or best hiker or some shit, like I'm not, there's a 10,000, 100,000, a million better songwriters than I am, but I still wanted to write that song. You see what I'm saying? And that is what it's all about. It's that it's a desire, but it's not a desire, personal desires for want. It's the desire to have God give you and gift you that understanding. And that's work. You're not, and you have to climb the mountain. No one's going to push you up that mountain, and you have to decide to do it. And you have to decide you're going to get to the top and come back down. That's it.
Yeah. And that's those kind of things actually give you something. Like, I feel like a lot of the regular jobs we have in society is just a hamster wheel. It's just going around and around and around the same place, doing the same things, waking up the same day, going to work, afterwards going home, watching TV. And it's like a lot of people live their life on repeat. I mean, not strictly speaking, but a lot of repeating.
No, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's like a Groundhog's Day for lots of people. And it's like they live for the weekends. And I know people that are, I know people personally that are essentially like living their entire life waiting for retirement.
Yeah.
Which is
my
just
parents.
Lots of people, right? And to me, that's I don't know. Maybe I'll eat my words later, something like that. But to me, that's absolute freaking nightmare.
Yeah.
I never lived that life. My life was, I was always sort of rambunctious and rebellious and kind of a shit kicking kid or whatever, but because I was brought into a world that didn't make any sense, that it seems like there was tons of pain and suffering, nothing was logical, and I was just hell bent on heaven bent maybe on not accepting it and trying to understand, because there was an intuitive, and lots of people have this, I'm sure you have it as well, this inherent or innate or intuitive sense that something is wrong and that needs to be fixed. And that wrong, in one sense, it'll bring you right back to here, because the thing that needs to be fixed or put on the straight and narrow path is you.
Yeah.
You know?
The Gnostics. So, I heard, I think it was on AM by Gnostic Radio. Have you heard that podcast?
No.
Oh, yeah. It's probably one of the biggest Gnostic podcasts out there. Really check it out.
Really?
He's great. Yeah, he's great. And he speaks about how Gnosticism is basically God went mad, and the Gnostics saw it as their job as like psychologists to cure God of his insanity. Jung also speaks of this, like the Gnostics were the first depth psychologists, and that's why Carl Jung was so interested in Gnosticism.
Yeah, I mean, he writes quite extensively on. I mean, that's one of the places. Jung was one of the places I had. Alchemy was. A lot of my learning about alchemy was from him. Of course, Hermeticism. So yeah, I don't know too much about that. Like God went crazy, other than the notion that you're put into a place that seems chaotic, and you're supposed to find the logos.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The truth.
And through, of course, psychological means, which in a Christian sense, that's repentance. I mean, that's what it is. You're going into your head and, in a sense, feeling sorry, but you're trying to find the right throughout all the wrongs, to put it, in not only in your own life, but in the world, So, yeah.
I have been having a hesitation, because I feel like before I even do an action, I don't feel wise enough to do the correct action. So I just want to gain more wisdom before I can make decisions, make big decisions. Because I just don't feel like at the level I want to be to make correct or good decisions, make the best decisions, or in the current situation, which is very interesting. It's the sought for wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, you can't spin your wheels. You have to sort of keep moving. Like I mean, I've said it in this way, like at least creatively, I always had to have. Yeah, well, and I don't I always had to have something on the stove. Like if there was one burner, then the food was almost ready, I had to have another one going, and I didn't know if I was gonna totally screw up that meal or not. But I still had to keep, because if you stop, then it's kind of like, and it isn't to say stop for reflection or things like that, but you got to kind of keep on the path and keep going and get yourself up every day and walk on it. And no, you might go down the wrong path. That's part of it, and you also have to have the courage to get up, do that, go down the path that might be wrong, and then also be smart enough to be like, look, I went down the wrong path. I totally screwed up. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to walk back, and I'm going to get on the right path. And what's so funny is that people shy away from mistakes and things like that, but it's so humbling and so like righteous, and it shows so much integrity when you admit you're wrong. And people are like, yeah, see, this guy's, he's, that sort of thing. He's just on the level or whatever. And so that's what it's all about. Yeah. So I would say, don't be afraid. I don't give advice. By the way, I don't like telling people what to do. I'm just saying what I did. But, even if it might be the wrong thing, it's all right. He's going to find out it's the wrong thing. I think Henry Rollins said it like this. 50% of life is screwing up, and the other 50% is dealing with it. It's one of those things. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah. Who was it that said, like, 90% of the work is just showing up? I think it was some actor.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like McConaughey or something, right? Look, it's true. I mean, in one sense, how many people just don't even show up? I mean, most.
Limiting beliefs.
Most people. What's that?
Limiting beliefs.
Yeah, and not showing up is just accepting essentially what you're told, and that's everything from history to cosmology to your religion to everything. You know, so many people just like, oh, I guess that's just how it is, and I'll go along, and even though it doesn't make sense. Oh, well, no, it's just never good enough for me, and it's never. That's really what a mystic is. It's like, no, I want truth, and I'm going to go into it, and I'm not going to have half-assed beliefs. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I said it in the book like this: a Kabbalah is a true Kabbalist, in whom God is pleased anyway, is never satisfied with, like, they want proof of God, not just a belief, not just like, well, you know, generally we can understand that God is. No, I want proof. I want to be able to show. I want to be able to, you know, show it and then relay it to other people. That's how I don't know. Bullheaded, I think you have to be in one sense, you know. So,
yeah, I think we're living in. I mean, how can we not talk about this? We're living in very interesting times, aren't we? There will be. Well, what does it say in Revelation? There will be war.
I mean, personally, I think we're at the shifting of ages. It's something that long before, you know, the Kuf-19s and all of this sort of stuff. It's actually the turning of the ages, and the idea that there was basically different sort of patterns in time was something that, I don't know, it just struck me as so right for some reason. And it was something that I really got into with like the Mayan studies with John Major Jenkins, who I have an enormous amount of respect, may he rest in peace, for him. And it's really what got me into it. And so that's what it feels like right now. Like these people, like the World Economic Forum and the UN and NATO and all the, you know, whatever, the prime ministers and presidents all over the world that are all working against to basically destroy Western civilization. They understand that we're sort of in this turning of the ages, and they're trying to monopolize on it. They're trying to jump on that. Now, how that turning of the ages is understood and mapped through the stars, that's something that we're still trying to understand. And it's something I can't give any sort of proof to in that sense, other than it's a concept that is very well established within mystical literature. Once again, and mathematically into calendars, like the Mayan calendar. Say what you want about it. It is an mathematical masterpiece. Absolutely. I mean, and I've done deconstructions of it, and it's unreal, the intelligence of those systems. So they obviously knew something, and they absolutely talked about world ages. No question.
Yeah. Jesus speaks in, I can't remember what book it is, but he speaks about the Passover and follow the man carrying a jug of water into the house that he enters. That's Aquarius, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think currently entering the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, allegedly that's what, you know, mythically anyway. I once again, because I want to find this really quick since we're talking about this. It's a bunch of verses from the Bible that basically show that that there's basically patterns, different ages and eons of time, and that the earth will always be around. The earth is always around, and there's different patterns of time. My Lord, sorry. Oh, here we go. I don't know what these verses are. I'm just going to read these, but it says, "Who laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be removed forever?" So the earth is forever. So this idea that, you know, the earth is going to crumble and go into, you know, dissolve into nothingness at some point. No, apparently not. The foundations of the earth will not be removed forever. "For behold, I create a new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind." Once again, ages, eons, these things, I think the thing that we're going through right now. And then if you look back into history, it's obviously there's lost civilizations that we know nothing of, right? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. "Nevertheless, we according to his promise look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness." So it's this idea that the earth is this sort of material place. Once again, these spirits come down to undergo their sort of rites of passage. And there's these patterns of ages and eons. You know, a new heavens and a new earth will be created, and we won't remember the old one. And this is, I think, exactly what these psychopaths are doing with the Great Reset. They're utilizing this cosmic shift and saying, we're going to bring everything back to zero. Because that's what set means. When you reset, you bring it back to zero. And then they tell you, you will own nothing and be happy.
Eat bugs, live in a pod.
Yeah, eat bugs, live in a pod, you own nothing. So, interesting, right? I mean, once again, I would love to be able to know exactly why, in as far as astrologically or whatever, or astronomically, what those shifts are. Because once again, it seems very clear that they happen.
Do you think, like in Revelation, it does speak like there's one Jesus returning? Like, we all understand like Christ consciousness and stuff, but Revelation is pretty specific about one person, like saying a word and blasting a whole army and all this. What do you think?
This Revelation is it's a story about personal revelation of Christ. When Christ, in the Gnostic perspective, when Christ returns within you. And when you actually understand this general idea of, Christ, coming down into the human being and becoming enlightened, going through a process of salvation on earth, meaning you go through it here, that's the return of Christ. When you understand that motif and then you read the Bible, especially Revelation, which I'm going to do at some point, Sunday services on, it makes all the sense in the world. And the other thing that you can absolutely prove, at this point, you can prove it, you can make total sense of it, is that those verses are all astronomical. Specific astronaut, it's like the feet of a bear and the head of a lion, and his dragon gave him seat and great authority. This is Drago, this is Draco, the dragon. This is Ursa Major, the bear. This is Leo, the lion, had the face of a lion and the feet of a bear, and the et cetera, et cetera. Specific constellations that they're mentioning here. So a lot of people will look at it and say, that's an end of the world scenario that you're reading in Revelation. Well, it is, but it's the end of your world. It's the end of, it's the revelation that's like, that old world is dying, and now I'm being reborn, entering into the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, so generally speaking, we don't actually interact with people the way we think we do. It's like you're constantly shifting through, like, everything, time itself, all of time exists at once. Like, all you're doing really is shifting to different points of views from, like, you can think of everything as existing at once, and it's the mind that moves into like a couple of billion times a second or whatever. And that's how everybody kind of lives in their own bubble, and we just faintly interact with other people. And the people we're interacting with are the people that's matching our frequency or reality. You don't even meet most people on Earth, do you? It's like glass walls.
So much to be said here. The infinite, I think it's called in the movie Waking Life, it's the infinite wow that is happening right now kind of thing. It's literally the transcendence of time. And that is something that's found within the Trinity. Trinity is past, present, and future, creator, preserver, destroyer, and that's Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Well, the Father is the creator, the Holy Ghost is the destroyer, and Christ, the Word, is the present. And the present is something that's always there, which represents the eternal now. And so I don't know if you know Richard Cassaro, the author Richard Cassaro. If you don't, anybody that doesn't know him, you should definitely check him out. Got a couple really great books. But one of the books he had was called, I think it's called The God Self Icon is what the book is called. But it's basically showing that in architecture all around the world. And it's literally found all around the world, from South America, and up in the States and UK, everywhere, just China. And it's the symbol of a guy or a being or whatever, and he's strapped between two poles, and he's literally holding on to two poles. And you'll find this in the top of gateways of doorways and stuff like this. And it's this idea that the human being is stretched between past and future, and ultimately you're to find that what you're saying, this timelessness of the now, this recognition of the oneness, where there is no time. It's timelessness.
Mercury.
And that's
so the silver lining.
Yeah. I mean, Hermes, Mercury, Thoth. I mean, all of these things. I mean, this is why Hermes is called Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus. The three. Yeah, thrice great, right? And so all of those things are referencing the exact same thing that you're talking about. And that's that now. Timelessness.
Anu and Lil Enki. Triad system. Sumerian cosmology. As well.
I listed a bunch in the new book. Because as I did more study throughout the year, Shiva, Brahman, and Vishnu, Isis, Osiris, Horus, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. There's Phanes, Oranos, and something else. There's a Grecian Trinity, whole list of trinities all over, all talking about the same thing. This is yet another phenomenon that we find as a Gnostic. You can see through. You can see through this because all of these separate religions that are seemingly separate, we're looking for the golden thread. Well, sure, this Trinity, the Norse Trinity is different names than the Hindu Trinity. The Hindu Trinity is different names than the Egyptian, and the Egyptian is but when you look past, they're all talking about the exact same thing. This is transcendence. This is what transcendence means. Transcending these limitations of language, geography, civilization, race, ethnicity, etc., time period. You're transcending all of it and saying, what I'm talking about is something that's beyond all of that.
Yeah, so. And it's very infuriating to argue with people who are like, everything's separate. There's separate things. Everything's a separate thing. Well, I'm trying to like draw connections between different religions and stuff. No, this is Hermeticism. This is Christianity. This is it's like everything has to be put in a category.
It's so crazy because people will say, "Oh, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. There's no other way but through Jesus." And I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with that, 100%. The problem is you don't understand what Jesus is. That's the issue because not you, but you know what I'm saying. These people that I'm speaking of, they think Jesus is this separate thing that they've compartmentalized in their head that's not transcended. It's a dude that lived 2,000 years ago and he's going to fly back on a white horse. And they say, well, if you don't believe in this, then you don't have the way, the truth, and the life. And the problem is that you don't understand what Christ is actually representing is, everything we're talking about. Hermeticism, alchemy, the Mercury, everything like that. It's there is only one way, but you've separated it and put it over here and said it's just this. It's like, no. The true way will lead you to all of the great mystery teachings because they're all the same. They once again, when you transcend all the limitations, the temporal limitations, you'll find the divine. So that's really what Christ is trying to bring you to. Ultimate oneness. This is what monotheism is all about. This is what the Trinity is all about, bringing the three into one. So in oneness, there is no separation. And yet the very people that are supposed to be embracing oneness are going around separating everything.
We spoke about the times we're living in. You will not be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast. Let's not get too much into what that is, because this won't get uploaded on YouTube. But but it's it's like I'm sitting there checking off Revelation.
The beast, that beast system in Revelation, because this stuff is timeless, is always with us in one sense. I say it like this too. It's like, can you buy or sell without a social security number? Do you know what I mean? There's so many of these things that, that are basically representing this beastly system. A beast, people, they talk about the number of the beast and the name of the beast and all this other stuff, right? The beast is actually a reference to animals. When you look at the term beast, as in the Bible, it's a reference to animals. Well, the beast system is that they want to treat you like an animal, that you're not a divine being, that they want to treat you like a piece of meat. And so that's really what the beast system is all about. So, and it seems like every cycle, this story happens, that there's a deterioration into, whatever darkness and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it gets renewed. And so in one sense, yeah, revelation is that. I mean, it's a reflection of that, you know.
Circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you realize and you stand back and you see that this is the beginning is the end, just like Christ says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Well, what is the circle? Boom. Beginning, end, same thing, you know? So, yeah. I mean, that's the world that they want to bring in. So, but that world won't last. That world, by the way, that world won't last. It doesn't. It never will. I mean, this is where there's a comfort in God, is that once you realize that everything down here that's created in the material world is fleeting and passing.
Yeah, it's like
which
the theory
means
of the forms.
A golden age. Yeah, it's as well as a golden age. That golden age, we will get there again. It's not going to last. It's going to fall to deterioration. And then it's going to get so dark and people are like, oh, it can't get any more dark. And then it gets a little darker and then it comes right back up.
Yeah. It's like the story of Nebuchadnezzar, I think, right? The statue.
Yep.
The gold, silver, bronze, whatever.
Nebuchadnezzar lost his wife. Oh, that song? Black Crows? Anyway.
I was actually researching something on the axis of evil. They call it. They call it the axis of evil. It's not the military campaign or whatever. It's that Earth is actually at the center of the universe, at all of creation. Like Earth's orbit around the sun is the center of the whole thing.
Well, I mean, I'm a flat earther, so you know I'm a geocentrist. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, spoke at the Flat Earth conference, did a Flat Earth, bunch of Flat Earth videos. How
do you explain because I think it's the number 43,200 or something like that, the equinox. Well, whatever. I'm not super on the math, but the squaring of the circle, the pyramids, calculate the area of the Earth. So if it's a circle, how would that work?
So they say. Yeah, so they say. But that's all nonsense.
Okay.
Which basically, it's something I fell for, early on. And basically what it showed me is that the people that are manipulating our cosmology are using these squaring the circle is literally it's the mystical mathematical art. It's the thing that really helps you understand your cosmology, helps you understand spirit and matter, helps you understand geometry, helps you understand, it's all embedded in Christ, that sort of thing. So when you see these people that are using the metrology of the Earth and the Moon and relaying it to squaring the circle, this is like, once again, supercharged, like, hyper Satanism at its core. They're taking a mystical mathematical art and manipulating the metrology of our cosmology while lying to us about it. If you look at any astrological chart, it's all geocentric, meaning everything is revolving around the Earth. The Earth is stationary in the center, just as you experience it, and everything is revolving around you, just as you experience it. We're told that we're spinning at 1,000, the equator is 1,037.5 miles an hour right now at the equator. Like if we were just hanging near Hawaii or whatever, right? The speed of sound is like 700 miles an hour, something like that. So we're supposed to be spinning 400 miles an hour faster than the speed of sound, or roughly, yet you don't feel anything. When you look at every cosmology,
but you feel something. If you're moving at a constant rate in a core, you don't feel the motion. If it's a constant, if the rate is constant, you don't feel. Otherwise, if you if you were going
1,037.5 miles an hour in your car, and there was any sort of deviation whatsoever, what would happen to that car? If you're going 1,000 miles an hour and you went like this on the steering wheel, your car would be spinning and going out, crashing, no question. If you did half that, 120 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour, you just did this with your steering wheel, chances are you're going to crash that car, right?
Yeah. So but the speed also depends on the size of the object. If you think about it, like if you a hangar boat's going that speed, it's not going to crash as fast as a car,
So have you investigated Have you investigated flat Earth at all?
Yeah, I've been investigating it recently, and I think they wanted to disprove the globe theory, globe model, and they used a gyroscope, laser gyroscope, because the Earth, like every hour or something, it's like 15 degrees, and it showed a 15-degree movement.
You watched the Netflix special, huh?
No, I was just watching it on TV. There was some.
Oh yeah. That's the problem. They all lied about that shit. Like I know the guys that were. Yeah, I like know the guys that are. Yeah. I'm like friends. You're not like buddies or anything like that, but I know them pretty well. The guys that were in the movie, the Netflix movie, and the stuff that they did on television, it was complete lies. Complete lies. They actually did. The guys like Jaron and stuff like that. They've done they've debunked this, and they've tried to get the filmmakers to actually acknowledge this, and they won't. I mean, it's all, this is something that us flat earthers have been talking about literally for years. So it's, I don't even like to debate the flat earth thing, just because, I mean, not that I don't like to debate or anything like that, but at this point, I'm just kind of like, well, yeah. And at this point, there's so many of these basic questions that like you're asking, no offense or anything like that. I'm just saying that we've gone up and down and around literally for years now. Since 2015, we've been talking about this shit. And people will just be like, yeah, well, what about, Aristophanes and, the shadows and shit, and for us, it's absolutely a joke. One of the things I actually like to promote is my friend Dave. He has a phone app. And on that app has a list of questions. So everything that anybody would really even ask about. Well, what about the edge? What about gravity? What about the space organizations? What about Antarctica? What about the North Pole? What about, circumnavigating the Earth? What about this? What about that? Right? All these questions that everybody asks. How does the sun set? What about the eclipses? And so he has all of these questions right on a phone app. You can get it for like $5 or something. And when you click on each one of these questions, it'll literally give you a list of videos of showing, explanations for this stuff or that sort of thing. Everything from, hey, why are we seeing something that's 150 miles away when we're only supposed to see 3.5 miles away? All of these things. So at this point, I'm kind of like, I don't even bother arguing already with people. I'm just kind of like, and the other thing is there's people that, like I said, that I'm sort of friends with that do that stuff full time, that don't mess with esoterica or Gnosticism or any sort of that. And so I kind of leave it to them because I'm like, look, I have to focus on the stuff that I have to focus on, kind of thing. And so, but
for me, it's. I already know NASA is lying about. It's basically a military operation, NASA.
Yeah, think whatever you want about the cosmology of the Earth. Like, I don't even care. Like, whatever anybody wants to think, that's fine. But at this point, if you're putting your faith in NASA, or JAXA or ESA, holy shit. The amount of absolute buffoonery that these people put forward as proofs and the amount of debunking you can do. But I got a friend, Jaron, and, he's pretty popular website and, site, all this YouTube channel. And he's made countless videos where you will watch NASA and you will laugh your ass off at how fake it looks, how ridiculous it is, green screen this, no explanations, people asking serious questions to astronauts and being like, yeah, space smells like burnt steak and, just craziness,
Should I send up a rocket? Here in Sweden, we don't have any laws against sending a rocket.
Well, the thing is, people have sent up balloons. This is the thing that's, look, geometry, geo means earth and metry means to measure. So if you're going to take geometry seriously, then you should probably measure the earth, right? And there's no curvature. People have sent up, literal balloons that have gone up. What is it? I think the biggest one is like 23 miles up or 21 miles up. It's something, straight up, no curve back to forward or left to right, Okay, but you mean to tell me that I can only see 3.5 miles when I'm standing, allegedly anyway. I'm told I can only see 3.5 miles while I'm standing on the beach. Well, I'm seeing curved there go over, but you go up and you don't, it's flat, left to right, forward to back. 23, 21 miles up. Doesn't make any sense. That we're spinning and that there's that rate of curve, 8 inches per mile squared, that whole thing. So, like I said, I mean, there's so much information on this stuff that
I feel like it should be easy to prove
you
or
can
disprove.
dive into it all day long.
Right? It should be easy to prove or disprove.
It really is. Actually, this is the thing. It's actually really easy to prove that the Earth is flat. It's really hard to convince people that it is, though, because of the mind control, the spells. People. Also, there's a hearty amount of social rejection that comes with this, and I've lost countless friends because of that. Just because I'm like, yeah, Earth's flat, and I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I just rambunctious, rebellious kind of dude that just like, I don't really give a shit. If it's true, it's true, and I'm going to talk about it. That's it. Period. End of story. Full stop.
I know I know the Sumerians had a flat Earth theory. Like their whole cosmology was flat with like 3 domes, or firmament, or whatever it's called.
When you get down to the like meat and potatoes, brass taxes, pretty much of any cosmology from any of these like quote unquote high civilizations.
Yeah.
Flat and stationary, 4 corners, usually a dome. The Norse master sailors, right? Master sailors. They were unquestionably, at least, as far as we understand, and the same cosmology. It's flat. There's literally an ice wall, just like we have pictures of. Ice wall around the flat dome. It's a domed shape Earth. You'll get the same thing in Genesis. You'll get the same thing by the Norse. You'll get the same thing with Mayans. You'll get the same thing with the Lakota. You'll get the same thing with the Egyptians, the Sumerians. You just go down the list of cultures that understood perfectly that, look, this is a dimensional plane. God made it for human beings. You're at the center of the thing, and the cosmology actually proves this. All those stars are constantly revolving around the Earth. And here's the other thing that's just, really puts the pedal to the metal when trying to understand like flat Earth and true cosmology is that those star positions are in the same position. And they have been for at least as far as we know, thousands of years. Yet we're told that we're coursing through a Milky Way galaxy at 500,000 miles an hour, and we're spinning around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. This just crazy, speeds and rotation spins and all this other shit. And yet here we are, stationary. We experience it stationary. We experience it flat. The constellations are still in the same position, and they're all rotating around us. So
I'm going to say I'm still skeptical about flat Earth. It's interesting, and I think of it on many levels, as well as like psychologically speaking. Like in a sense, things don't really exist unless you look at them. Like quantum theory, is there only like a what's it called? Like super precision, where it's like just a probability before you look at something. That's the double slit experiment proves that. So in a sense, you can say it's flat because you can't see the edge, right? It looks flat to you, and your experience is crucial to all the reality.
I think that's the fundamental point, is that your experience is what's crucial to reality. So we could argue all day long about the shape of the Earth, and people do, obviously, right? Hence why I don't really bother with it. But What is true is that we have a common sense, and that is the sense that is common to every single person. Regardless of what you think about the cosmology, what do you actually experience? The Earth is flat and stationary. It's a plane. We see it as a plane, a dimensional material plane. The sun and the moon are revolving around you, whether it's actually going under the Earth or going around the Earth or we're spinning around it, whatever. What do you experience? The sun and the moon are revolving around you. The stars are revolving around you. That's what you experience. So that's those are the senses that are common to people, And so once again, we could argue all day long or whatever about what the cosmology is, but what is actually important is what you experience. Because that's what God wanted you to experience.
Have you?
And let me say one more thing. There's no way we could possibly know actually what the cosmology is unless we could stand outside of it and look at it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can do that in material bodies. So that, you could take that into, it's more of a matrix or a Maya. It's illusory, that sort of thing. That would be a fine explanation of it too, because as you're saying, it is very dreamlike kind of thing. Whereas is the if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it actually kind of fall thing, right?
Can be argued.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah. And you'll never know, right?
How are you gonna prove or disprove it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. You can't. I guess, and then you could say, well, you could put a camera up, but then the camera is the intention of the human being. So you're, you know what I mean, that sort of thing. So there's arguments for that too. So yeah, I mean, yeah, people have trail cameras all the time, and they see deer eating corn and that sort of thing. So there isn't a human being there. So is the deer there? Well, yes, of course, but you know,
former NASA physicist. No, former NASA physicist Thomas Campbell did this video on presentation on delayed quantum eraser, and they like, we'll see if I can remember how it worked. They like split the recording of the, you know, which one it entered. They split it. Either. Yeah, they split that up and the firing of the proton, I think. Like so they were split up the measurements, and then they deleted one of them, and they got the same result. Then they deleted the other, and it was a different result. And that's because it's actually not the measurement that's causing the collapse. It's the consciousness that's causing, because it could get like. It would get altered in the past, like it would move backwards. Time would move backwards. The effect would be the cause, and the cause would be the effect. That's very interesting. I have a video on it. It explains better.
Yeah, you know, I don't know, a couple of years I was kind of enamored with quantum physics, but I don't give it too much credence now. Other than, yeah, I mean, what's the fundamental conclusion? I mean, I think that's pretty plain to see, right? I mean, we do most of our living up here. You know, we're thinking all the time and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately that's the lesson of quantum physics, and any mystic will really tell you that that's absolutely true. You know, so yeah. And I think our thoughts do affect reality. I mean, I've experienced that. You know, where I've been a shitbag and I had my thoughts going out into my reality, and it, you know, it kind of comes back to you. There's in some way, shape, or form. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, in some kind of synchronistic way, for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to. I remember you speaking about. You know what the Black Sun is, right? It's used in Gnosticism and Satanism.
Yeah. What is it? Ahu? Is that the name? I think it's like the Hindus have it.
Saturn. It's Saturn.
Oh, I'm actually talking about there's I think it's a Hindu thing. I'm sorry. But it's like basically the notion that there's a black disc, a black disc that actually goes in front of the sun and the moon during. Anyway, I'm going to screw that up. I'm going to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, Saturn. Okay, we'll go with that, though. So, yes, we can talk about
that. There's that's where we get the cube of Saturn from. Is on the just a hexagon on the top of Saturn. At least as far as NASA's showing us.
Yeah, I know, this is the problem. So, yeah. Because, I mean, that's all photos from satellites that were, you know, allegedly in NASA, which is like, yeah, you know, I mean, the Hubble to me is complete bullshit, the ISS. And so that said, does Saturn have, you know, a connection to the cube in that sense? Yes, there's tons of connections, regardless of any sort of NASA.
Saturn, alchemy.
Yeah, there's, I mean, that's a huge discussion there, because the cube is also representative of God. Okay. And the cube is representative. Yeah, Metatron's cube in Revelation. The house of God is a cube. It's four square. Its length, its breadth, and its height are the same. This is Kabbalah. You know, then we get into the conversation about, you know, Satanism and that sort of thing, and the inversion of sacred material, divine things. This is what Satan does: is wraps himself up in that sort of stuff. So that's a huge conversation. But Saturn ultimately represents time. Represents you being encased in time. Chronology, chronos, I think most people understand that. That's father time. Saturn is Father Time. Father Time is trying to constantly reap and sow those souls. And that's exactly what, God, what is it? Acts or something? What's the verse? Anyway, basically it's talks about how, what did they name it? Is it Beelzebub? I think it's Beelzebub in the Bible, where it talks about they sacrificed the children of God to Beelzebub. Is it Baal? Is that the verse?
Baal Moloch.
Okay.
Baal. Pretty much is it.
Yeah, Moloch. I think it's Moloch. That's what it is. Yeah, Moloch. Eats the children, right, in that whole verse. And then that's the verse, that whole little chapter there where they talk about the star of Remphan. And a lot of people, and that is a reference to Saturn. That's a reference. And so a lot of people think that that's like the Jewish Star of David or something like that. But you have to understand that wandering planets were called wandering stars. Originally, before they were called planets, they were called wandering stars. So the star of Remphan in the Bible is Saturn. They
call Saturn, the Romans called Saturn Star of the Sun.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. Huh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's, in the electric universe geometry, cosmology, there's a theory that Saturn actually used to be a sun, or a star before. We used to have two suns. And you think of an angel. Yeah, I think of actually the angels or the stars we're seeing. And Saturn used to be a glowing star. Now it's a fallen star. And you talk about there being no nighttime at in heaven or whatever, in heaven on earth. So I'm speculating that it's because who rules Aquarius? It's Saturn. Saturn's the ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn, there's going to be a second sun in the sky. Saturn is going to light up, and there's going to be daytime all the time. That's a theory I have. That's why it's called the Black Sun.
One thing I'll say this, for my own studies, what I do now, like almost exclusively, is stay away from any theorizing.
It's hard.
Yeah, I don't I desperately stay away from conjecture, opinion, and theorizing, because really what we seek as truth seekers, right, this is in the Christian Gnostic sense, this would be the way, the truth, and the life, seeking out Christ, which is ultimate truth. Truth is available to people, and it's a theory. It's not a theory, it's a theorem. And a theorem is something that's provable, that sort of thing. Commonsensical is the sense that's common to everybody, that sort of thing. So I try to seek out theorems and not theories, because just personally, years of ruminating and philosophizing on a lot of these stuff, you go down all of these paths of theories, be like, oh, maybe that's true. But then you realize that God has presented truth all around you, and he doesn't want you to theorize endlessly on a bunch of bullshit that may or may not be true, right? He wants you to find theorems. He wants you to find truth. And so, when people say oh, well, this happened 2,000 years ago, or these beings from on high came down and gave us this information and stuff like that, we're never going to know that stuff. We'll never know that. We can never get proof on any of that stuff. The things we can get proof on are the things we experience, right?
We can get proof of the Nephilim. I think publicly there's on the internet verified giant bones and stuff, photos. And they must have come from somewhere.
Yeah, we can. I think we can absolutely prove that there were giants. That to me I think that's provable at this point. Not only are the skeletons, that are all gone, that we have just the buildings that are left around the world. If you look and you see, even ones in America here, we went to, oh Jesus, where was it? Indiana? I think we were in Indiana. It was the Capitol building in Indiana. And go look at the pillars are bigger, the doorways are bigger. You go inside, everything looks like it was built for people that are 3 times my size. And it does, and we can't rebuild this stuff today. And there's buildings all over the world that are like this. I think it's Indiana. When we went out east, we stopped. We were driving. And both my wife and I are like, God, look at that. It's got this big gold dome. It's like people that are our size did not build that shit. No, we can't do it. And so, to me, that's proof that, who was here was bigger. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
They found the BBC reported finding the tomb of Gilgamesh. From
the BBC. The BBC. Yeah. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Which that whole Epic of Gilgamesh, which I need to do a sermon or a live stream or something on that. That's all star study.
You think
it's
so?
like you can relate all of those characters to constant. Oh yeah, we could do it. Like I need to do that, because when you once again take this esoteric knowledge, it's transcendental. So you can take that knowledge that's over here, that's in this sort of high place, and you can bring it back and use it as lens to view all of these other things. So the Norse mythology is no different. Jormungandr is a big dragon serpent. That's Draco. There's the Yggdrasil tree that's in the center of the earth. This is the Kabbalistic tree of life that has 10 emanations around it. There's 9 of these levels of a tree, and that tree is born from the nothingness of the beginning of the creation. It's like these exact same things that are just recapitulated in the Norse. The Norse also have, I think it's called, I forget what the horse is called, but it's Odin rides this gray/white horse down, and it's like a Pegasus kind of horse.
Yeah.
Sleipnir. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's Pegasus. That's the constellation Pegasus. You know what I mean? Like you can just keep going and going and going and going. So, and you can do this in Egypt too. You can do, like Apep is what's the serpent? Well, that's Draco. You can, once you have this sort of pattern, you can place it on everything and be like, oh, what they're talking about, So
yeah, but there's also a lot of titles in the Bible, like the serpent. That's either Hermes or Enki. Is referring to the family of the serpent, which Ningsida is the son or grandson of Enki. So they're both in the serpent bloodline or the serpent family. And then you have Enlil's family, which is the eagle, which we call it Scorpio today, but it's the same constellation there. And I'm not exactly sure how all the planets correlate with the gods, because I do believe the gods to be real, physical, they're spiritual. They can, they're gods. They're also real beings, but the planets it's reflecting their frequency or something. It's as above, so below. They have. It's like their body, in a sense, the physical. But they're not limited to just being there. They can be multiple places at once. I think it gets complicated.
I would highly recommend, like the sermon I just did this morning was on Noah's Ark and the dove. And I would highly recommend people watch that. It's like an hour. And like I said in the beginning of that, I was like, if you watch this, you'll never see the biblical stories the same ever again. Because what you can do is read the story that you're given in Genesis, and you can make perfect sense of literally every line that they're telling you about a flood, what the flood is, what the Noah's Ark is, what the animals are. You can make sense of every line. When you bring something that is commonsensical to everybody, it's the sense that's common to everybody, and that's the stars above. Okay, so I go to show in that how the ark is Argo Navis, how the raven and the dove is the constellations Columba and Corvus, and the river is the river of the Milky Way, that sort of stuff. So a lot of these things have, in one sense, extremely specific meanings. But you can't theorize about it. You have to come to theorems. In other words, when the Bible tells you about a dove, they're talking about something very specific. They're not just being like, oh, I'm just going to ruminate on what the dove is. No, it's like, hey, this is an archetype. It's a symbol. Not only does it have a constellation in which it's referencing, it also has literally a spiritual alchemical process that it's referencing. And all of these things are it's not meant to. Once again, you're supposed to find meaning in it. It's supposed to make sense. In other words, So I guess that's what I'm saying. Like I stay away from theorizing too much because I want truth.
Yeah.
I want to know what these things actually mean.
I think we have a lot of history in the Bible as well with the flood, for instance. That's the Younger Dryas event, for sure. I mean, there's one of the floods. It's been many, but it's one of the one that sank Atlantis, I think. The dates match up all too well. 12,000 something years ago. Exactly on the mark.
Yeah, I mean, I know the work of like Carlson and that sort of stuff, though. I mean, he's still on a ball and that sort of thing. But whatever, that doesn't really matter. But the Bible is written just like any other great work of literature is written, in one sense that any if you're a fictional writer, right, you don't just like make up things out of thin air. You use real life situations, real life places, characters and things like that you even met in real life, and you embody these epic tales usually within them, whatever your story is. Yeah. And that could be, that's, I mean, you can look at any great book from like Grapes of Wrath to freaking whatever, right? And you'll have, real places, characters that were maybe even based on real people or experiences that real people had, that sort of stuff. So I think the Bible is written much the same. So it isn't to say that there wasn't a flood or there wasn't, right? But, and so it is based on history in the sense that history is cyclical and repeats itself. And there was a flood, absolutely. But, what that is actually signifying is these cycles of destruction and recreation is really what it's talking about. And so those stories are timeless, So yeah, I totally, in fact, that's what I covered today. I was like, hey, it's not saying there wasn't a flood. I think that there's ample evidence that, and not only in myth, but also like you're saying, like on the ground, looking that there was a flood. Yeah. All of that. I totally agree with that. So, I don't know. This is what makes the Bible just so amazing in one sense, because it's beyond history. It's a history of histories. Yeah. It's like the story of the.
It's a meta history.
Yeah. It's the story of like what happens down here, and ultimately your story of figuring that out and returning home, kind of thing. And once again, when you read it like that, it's just like goes this layer and then this layer and this and this, and it just keeps going up. And next thing you know, it's enveloping everything that you've ever learned. It's amazing. I mean, I say this, like knowing me, if you knew me as like a 20-year-old or whatever, the idea that I would be a Christian preacher and teacher is nuts. It's nuts. Like I would never thought I would be doing what I'm doing, but because it makes so much sense, because there's so many things that they're just like, oh my God, that is just unbelievable. It just drew me there. It was like, I didn't have a choice. It was like a freaking magnet kind of thing, because it's just so awesome. That's what makes, yeah. Anyway,
I'm more of the hermit on the hill in the cave.
Yeah, I'm definitely a hermit on the hill. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely the freaking, holding up the freaking lamp post on the hill, letting my eyebrows grow long on Cold Mountain. Yeah,
that's what I think a lot of, I don't know, I read it on Facebook today. I use Facebook. It's like some people like die at 25 and are buried at 75. It's like the Hermes represents first the baby. You have the small little baby stealing the cattle and whatever, cute little baby. Then you have a man in his prime, like looking like a Greek god, and then in his older age, think more of Hermes Trismegistus, this mystical old man that has this deep knowledge and wisdom, and it represents that's the three cycles, the present, past, future as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of people just they're grown-up children. They never went past 5 years old. They grew bigger.
Died at 25. What was it that? Yeah,
Died.
what was the
Died
what was
at,
the statement? Died at 25, but lived to 75, something like that.
buried at 70.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's like that Towns Van Zandt song, "Waiting Around to Die." I don't know if you know that song. It's
Yeah.
it's basically how people, so many people live their lives. They don't seek out the mysteries. They don't initiate themselves into higher levels of wisdom. Then they just sort of go along at a buzz level kind of thing, just sort of buzzing along. Not to say they don't have fun or go to a ball game or stuff like that, but they never bite their teeth into the fruit of this stuff.
They're gonna have many
And
incarnations.
it just is what it is. Look, that's another thing about Gnosticism that I just covered too. Is that today, but the last Sunday was the notion of reincarnation. How most people think that that's not in the Bible at all, and I'm just like, au contraire, my friend. I think you can't even understand. There's tons of verses and stories in the Bible that make zero sense unless you bring the thing that's poo-pooed by modern Christianity. I'm just like, well, one of the things I bring up all the time is like it says in Genesis, which is a story of creation, like the first creation. Here it is, and then it says, "Go forth and multiply and replenish the earth." Replenish, and wait a second, means to do again, and plenish means plentiful. So, like, how do you replenish something that wasn't plentiful in the first place? That doesn't make any sense, right? So, there's all sorts of clues in there to tell you that, like, once again, the same story that you're a soul. Spark of God put into a vessel, and you need to return home. You need to bring that spark back home.
Yeah.
And then you will undergo many lifetimes.
I don't think. Like a lot of Gnostics seem to think we're trapped in matter. Because we have Brahman and we have Atman, and then we have personal ego self or whatever. And on the level of Atman, you're actually because time doesn't work the same at spiritual level. So you can probably see the beginning and the end of your whole life, and then you choose to have this experience to learn from this, or at least you get key points. I don't think it's this. A lot of Gnostics have this depressing view that you're stuck, trapped. God has been trapped in matter and he can't escape. But it's such a pessimistic way of looking at things. That's what separates me from a lot of other Gnostics. More of a hermetic kind of, atom.
That's interesting. I've never really heard that. I'm sure it's expressed, but there's lots of different. I mean, this is the problem too. There's so many different Gnostic views over the years. It's like people that have written about Masonry. That you'll have people that have completely contradictory notions. Masons themselves, that will have completely contradictory notions to one another about what something means, kind of thing. So it's interesting. I've never really heard that Gnostics feel. I mean, of the trapped in matter, yes, but that was a permanent thing. How I always understood Gnosticism, it was that the goal is to release that matter, or release that spirit from matter. Excuse me. In the Bible, this is called being a prisoner of Jesus Christ. I should know the verse, but it talks about the notion that you're a prisoner of God. Well, I mean, that's Gnosticism right there at its core. It's like, no, God has put you here. It is an imprisonment. You are imprisoned in this matter. You are imprisoned in this cosmology, but it's not like, that's not a, I don't know, doom and gloom sort of fire and brimstone kind of way look at it. It's like, that would be only to focus on the negative aspects of life down here. Yet most people go through life and, it's an enjoyable thing. So much so that we don't kill ourselves, right? Most people want to stay. They don't want to. It's like, oh, life is suffering and pain. And then it was like, okay, well, you can just die. Well, no, I want to stick around. It's just like, and then we complain about, oh, we're imprisoned in matter. And it's like, well, then don't you want to fucking leave? It's like, so.
Yeah, but I just meant this. It was actually Bashar who talked about this. That we're not trapped in the sense of. I'm right now. I guess I'm trapped because I can't go anywhere. So in that sense, but on a spiritual level, our soul's not trapped in matter. It's the matter is an evolution of our consciousness, and it's like an interplay. Like you literally can't. How can you trap something that is omnipotent, omniscient, it doesn't work. Only way you're being trapped is because you can't remember that you're.
That's That's essentially. I mean, there's this sort of mystical notion that God lost himself in the material world, in a denser, fallen, lost himself for the whole purpose of having that individual experience to find himself again. I resonate really strongly with that. It makes a lot of sense. And so, I mean, I dig that.
That's what I was talking about. God went mad and became humans, basically.
I mean, it's that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of the Great White Brotherhood. I think Blavatsky talked about them. I have a friend who's in it. I don't know if I can speak about it. It's on fucking YouTube. I can speak about it. It's like a group of ascended masters. And I remember on their webpage, or one of their web pages, says that everybody who's not an ascended master is basically quite insane in a lot of ways. Like they don't see clearly. There's a lot of fog in their brain. Call it madness, call it confusion. Maybe a better word.
Well, I look at my former self and I can absolutely say that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say about, because that, it's not like a sacred and profane kind of thing. In one sense,
spectrum.
There is a sacred and profane, but you decide. Everyone's sacred. Everyone has the sacred scintilla or spark within them, unquestionably. Yeah. Even your enemy, even the worst person in the frickin' world has God within them. That's why you're taught in Christianity to love your fellow man, because you can't, if you hate that, you're hating God. You can hate the things that person has done. You can seek justice when there is injustice. That's not what we're talking about. But to hate it, that would be to hate God. So I'm sorry, what were you saying? I was going somewhere with that.
I spaced out too. I was listening to you.
I feel like such an idiot now.
Don't worry about it.
Anyway, I had something profound to say, but apparently it wasn't that profound.
It'll come back. I wanted to ask you about practical alchemy. Have you ever gotten into that? Like actually making gold out of lead?
No. I mean, look, I probably get some hate for this, but I think the people that do I don't know. I don't want to say this. I don't know how to say it.
I've never done practical alchemy, so I can't say. But
it isn't to say that there isn't. Yeah, it isn't to say that there isn't chemistry aspects to alchemy. Of course, there is. I mean, there's no question about that. But alchemy is a spiritual pursuit, and you can't even make sense of 90% of alchemical images or Rosicrucian doctrines. You can't make a lick of sense of that unless you bring the spiritual alchemy, the spiritual side to this. And even alchemy has this notion of turning lead into gold, right? And this has always been this sort of ruse that it's like, hey, if you actually are pursuing physical gold and you want that money, then you will forever be off the course.
Yeah.
Alchemy has this internal thing about it where it's like if you're seeking prestige and personal wealth and shit like that, alchemy will constantly kick you off the course.
Yeah.
And you might think that you're all super smart and look at me, I know, and I think a lot of the people that deal with the chemistry aspect of it, I think it's kind of nonsense. I really do.
I actually think there's, from what I've heard, to join these real alchemist societies, do you know what the entrance exam was? It was actually turning lead into gold. And Melchizedek, he's written the Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, I think it's called. He speaks about meeting a mod. I don't know if that guy's bullshit. Might be.
That guy is so full of bullshit. I'm sorry, I gotta say this enough. That guy is so full of bullshit. I'm sorry. It isn't to say there isn't some good stuff in his book.
Yeah. There's a lot of bullshit as well. Yeah.
Oh my god, just layers and layers of it. Once again, there's some good stuff in there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I haven't read his book, but I know that there's like those 2 books, and I've thumbed through them, and that sort of stuff. But I never been impressed with.
There's the insanity we get back to again.
yeah, exactly. Well, there's a whole. And I've experienced this too. Once again, there's a whole level of like controlling your ego with this shit too. Like humility is a huge part of this. And what you'll see is that there's so many people that get into this stuff. They don't get into it for the right reasons. They're not there. They want the prestige or the attention or the likes and the selling books and whatever, all that shit, and there's a lot of those people, unfortunately.
I hate marketing. I hate marketing. It's like they were like, should I share this? I feel like so shameful. I'm like, but I gotta get it out somehow.
I know I'm terrible at it, dude. I'm so bad. Like I need a hype person because I can't be like, oh, look at me, look at my stuff.
Yeah,
that's why I don't do any social. One of the reasons I don't do social media anymore, because it's like, I don't want the attention in that sort of sense. Like I'm kind of a private person. But I also feel like I have an obligation because of the things that I've learned and how much it's helped people and all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of characters out there. There's a lot of characters, and there's a lot of people that will go on Gaiam TV and fill your earfuls full of bullshit all day long just to collect a check. It's just a fact. And you got to watch out for those people. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of them.
And especially when you're talking about this more esoteric stuff, there's a lot of schizophrenics and people like that. Like I see sometimes in the comment sections, you're like, okay, back away slowly. They start going on these rants.
Well, God, there's so much to be said about that because, if you go down that road, you can, you could say this about a lot of different things where you'll lose your mind, right? It's like, well, that's why you should never even go down there. Well, yeah, say that you could say that for freaking rock stars and stuff like that too, or people that want to make, just generally, and I've met people like this, and I'm one of them, in one sense, genuinely and generally just love music, and they just love playing music and writing music and entertaining people, and they just wanted to do that as passionately. And then they go down that road and it's freaking drugs and women and bar owners that don't pay you at the end of the night, and it's and you got no retirement and you're living paycheck to paycheck and blah 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 blah, and it's that sort of thing, and that road can be dangerous too. So any of these things, you have to be well armed. This is putting the 6 pieces of the armor of God on and being like, whatever road I'm going to go down, I'm going to be a freaking warrior. Some people aren't because they're not in it for the right reasons. They want to I got the 100,000 subs on YouTube, and look at, I got 5,000 subs on Facebook, and
blah, blah, blah. And like the biggest channels on YouTube are also like the stupidest channels. It's like the low base denominator, like the lowest link in the chain.
What's funny though is what's funny though is I honestly think that if YouTube wasn't engaged in all of their pardon my language, but fuckery, right, censorship and stuff like that, I think some of these channels are huge. But they're shadow banned, and I'm shadow banned. I know that. There's people have told me, I don't know how many times, I didn't get your message. I didn't, I couldn't find you, blah, 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 blah. So, yet another reason why I don't do a lot of social media, because that's just, but.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm shadow banned or not. I do speak about a lot of controversial things, but I do try and keep it, on level. It's not I'll save the ranchy stuff for Bitchute or Odyssey or something. It's not worth it on YouTube. Plus, I'm monetized as well, and I don't want to lose the monetization either.
Yeah,
I get flagged.
I've struggled with. I've struggled with that a little bit because it's like, I can't stand self-censorship, and it's garbage. I can't stand that stuff. But at the same time, YouTube is like, I've said it like this: like YouTube is sort of a den of vipers, right?
Yeah.
They're just seething and gnashing teeth and wickedness pouring from every pore. And there's a sense that it's like, well, that's exactly where I want to go to teach about God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to walk into the fucking den of vipers and be like, yeah, Christ. Because I know for a fact that the people that run YouTube I don't want to get into any sort of religious discussion here as far as that's concerned, but they do not like Christ.
No.
That's for sure. I mean, one of the things they talked about with the COVID-19 protocols or whatever, is that you couldn't promote prayer for healing.
Huh.
That's YouTube, guidelines or whatever, community guidelines is one of the things that is like, oh, that's medical misinformation. Yet we know for a fact that, prayer or just positive thinking in general can be extremely healthy for you.
Yeah.
Forget about religious anything, just positive thoughts, reaffirmations of
misinformation. It's all double speak.
By the way, information is just information.
Yeah.
It's not telling you what to think. It's just
because
information.
It's already a charged word, misinformation.
Yeah, it doesn't even make it. It's just like social distancing. I mean, how stupid do you have? I'm sorry. How stupid you have to be. Social means to come together. Distance means to stay apart. I mean, when that thing rolled out, I saw everybody like, well, you got to social distance. I'm like, wow. Like basic grammar. Crazy.
Yeah, and and the masks too. Oh, right, like those are actually splash guards, so they don't get like blood when they're cutting people up in their face. So it's not gonna like the thing we shall not mention is 4 micrograms big, and the mask is like I don't know how wide the fucking webbed mask is, but it's ridiculous, and it's been proven in Denmark too. Like the studies, it's been proven everywhere now, I guess. But people are still wearing this mask. It's mass psychosis, for sure. It's, Jung spoke about that. It's like one of the most dangerous things there is mass psychosis. That's how wars happen. That's how...
Yeah, and they've been working on it for a long time.
Do you think people are going to be wearing... Do you think some people are going to be wearing this mask 10 years later? They're just never going to take it off.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, whatever. I don't want to project that into the future or prophesize some bad shit. But yeah, I mean, if they haven't taken it off by now, there are people that will wear it the rest of their lives. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong, but
I think it was...
the damage has been done in that.
Yeah, Jordan... I think it was Jordan Peterson, or was it the doctor who spoke about, like, IQs dropping, like, 20 points and, like, children because, you can't see your mouth when you're speaking, so they don't learn how to speak properly as well. Social cues and stuff like that. This is going to be a generational thing.
Yeah, I mean, freaking duh, right? I mean, we communicate with all of these different ways, like body language, facial language, smiles, and then also the sound, of course, of speaking. All of those things have been muffled up. You can't, I mean, I don't know how many times somebody has tried to speak to me in a mask. I'm like, I can't understand you. I mean, I played rock and roll for freaking how many years? So I have a little bit of tinnitus. So, right, I get this. I can't hear you, but what do you want to talk about this? I can't see you. I can't hear you. A child developing and not seeing that shit. I mean, my Lord, it's just pure Satanism.
Yeah.
It's absolutely satanic. And it's been very difficult. It's been very difficult because I've had friends that, put shit on their children and still do, and they're out playing basketball at school while they're breathing in their outgas. It's like, and willfully doing this, it's like, yeah, it's so heart-wrenching. It's like, Jesus, that's child abuse.
Yeah.
And I don't have any children, so people are like, well, if you had children, it might be different going to school. I would be yanking. I don't care what. If I had to go live it in a freaking tent, so my children would not have. That's exactly what I would do. And I know people that are doing that now. Literally, I know a person that was like living in a tent in Arizona just so they didn't bring their children to those indoctrination camps.
That's very brave. Very very beautiful. I myself want to get into bushcraft,
and they're loving it, by the way. And they were like, "Well, we don't have a choice." Yeah, I mean,
it's freedom. It's like how we used to.
It's not what I'm doing right now. I have a nice build.
Yeah, me neither. It gets like minus 40 here.
Personally,
so
yeah, it gets cold. It's
Yeah,
cold
it gets
up north.
minus 40 degrees
I've always,
Celsius.
yeah, I've always had an I don't know what you say, an affection or of resonance with nature.
Same.
I've always lived in nature. I mean, not always, but I always gravitated towards it. So, like when I lived in Wisconsin, I lived on like 10 acres of woods in the middle of the country. Didn't really, I mean, closest neighbor was a quarter mile away, something like that. When I lived in Eugene, I lived at the foothills of a big butte, and I was in the woods all the time. I actually lived in the woods one summer. Where I live now, when I lived in Hawaii, we lived off grid in the middle of the jungle. Where I live right now, it's, I'm away in the woods. And so it's like, I always wanted to be as close to the natural world as possible, because I don't know, I've had so many revelatory moments in nature, just
It's healing as
walking
well.
and thinking. Unbelievably healing. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the best things you can do is, if you feel ill or whatever, is go for a walk, get some sun, and get into nature. It's almost like it's the untouched expression of God in one sense,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that they wanted to destroy that as well. Just plow everything down. It's concrete everywhere.
Look, these people are anti-logos. They're anti-order. They're anti all of that stuff. And so, because they're anti-order, which means they're the opposite. They're agents of chaos.
Yeah.
So people are like looking at what's going on right now. They're like, oh my God, it's like they're looking at what's going on right now in the world. And they're like, oh, none of it makes any sense. Why are they doing this? I don't get it. You're not supposed to. It's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to be complete chaos. That's what they do. You're not supposed to. It doesn't make any sense. They're just destroying. They're right now, Trudeau and his minions and WEF and, World Economic Forum, they're destroying Canada purposefully, not making any sense doing it. They're doing the same in the United States right now. We're paying taxes, we're paying for our government to hand out crack pipes. But if I had a crack pipe right now and a police came up, I would be busted for it. But I'm paying taxes. Why is that? People are like, that doesn't make any sense. What's he doing? It's not supposed to. It's chaos.
Yeah.
And they're just going to keep bringing more of it and more of it and more of it.
We live in a system ruled by leeches.
Our response is order.
Ruled by leeches, protected by pigs, and kept running by sheep. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So let's see how long this recording has been. It's been we're closing up on 2 hours, something like that, 1.5 hours.
Okay.
So I think, what do you think about rounding this off?
Yeah, that's good. I was going to say, actually, I'm starting to have to pee here, so
yeah. It's so once again, tell people where they can find you.
Best place to find me is gnosticacademy.org. gnosticacademy.org, and there's it's a membership there. It's $5 a month. I keep it real cheap, and I have my old podcast there, which is the Marty Leeds Mathematical Radio Hour, and that has like just about 300 episodes, and then a bunch of other episodes. So there's all that with the podcast, as well as the video versions of that. I have documentaries. I've got a bunch of other videos that I've made on there. I've got all the books that I've written. They're all available to read on gnosticacademy.org. And that's Pi in the English Alphabet, Volume 1, 2, and 3. I did a book called The Peacock's Tales, the new book, Lord Jesus Christ, my first book, which is called Pi the Great Work, and then as well as the Unanimous Redeclaration of We the People, which is something we didn't talk about today, but you can read that there. And I have music as well. I have about like 11 music records, just stuff that I made basically at home. And so you can listen to those, and documentaries, all sorts of good stuff.
You've been a busy man.
Yeah. And then, still got more on the table too. And then service every Sunday, 9:00 Central Standard Time. And then I just basically, we do religious topics, and it's been a lot of fun, actually. People have really, the people that have been there have been, really amped. So I'd like to keep it growing. So, but we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, and I'm Simon. People know that. And I don't think there's much more. I've enjoyed having you on. I think we've had some very deep conversations and very broad speaking, and on many levels we've spoken. And I'd love to have you on again someday in the future once we've both grown in our knowledge. Maybe we're doing something completely different at that time, but we'll see. Anyways, thank you. Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah, no.
Peace.
All right, appreciate it.